Except I need to know what, or I guess I'll just record off. 6:30, I'm calling the meeting to order. Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Present.
Mrs. Davis.
Present.
Mrs. Hudson.
Present.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Present. This time, thank you all for being here. I'll introduce the people who are up here. To your far right here is Board Member Kelly Davis. Next to her is Board Member Jennifer Best. Next to me here is our Treasurer, TJ Cusick. I'm Charlie Wilson, the Board President. Next to me is our Superintendent, Dr. Trent Bowers. Next to him is our Board Vice President, Nikki Hudson. And next to her is Board Member Amy Lloyd. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the agenda has been changed a little bit from when it was first published, went public on Thursday, but as soon as we were aware of the personnel matters, they were posted on the agenda, so the public has had those. So I think the appropriate motion is a motion to approve the agenda as it's been posted.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as it's been posted on board docs for public availability. Any comment, question, any other changes, amendments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson.
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, motion to approve the agenda passes. At this time, we're ready for visitor comments. The board and the administration both encourage and greatly appreciate community interest in meetings of the Board of Education. And this section of the agenda is designed for the board and the administration to hear the views of community members about our schools or about any item on the agenda. Again, we do ask that all speakers address the board from the visitors podium and that you limit or give your name and your street address and limit your comments to 5 minutes maximum. And again, we also ask that any complaints about a particular employee be referred to the superintendent and never addressed during public session. And again, we want to remind everyone that our district greatly values and respects all people as they are, and that our district is committed to creating and maintaining safe spaces for all our students and community members. So we do ask Okay, at this time, we're now ready for the second reading of the school year calendar. I don't know what we do, voting out later on.
Members of the Board of Education, since our last meeting, we have not had any significant feedback regarding our option. I think that's representative of the fact that option B was the first choice of all groups that voted. So we're hopeful that tonight you'll be able to approve the calendar for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments anyone has? Yeah, Ms. Davis.
Randy, so are these surveys, I don't remember, are they typically conducted in May? Is this typical?
It's not, we do it at different times of the year. We usually try to time it so that we can get good coverage and get good participation. So this year with the construction schedule, we probably pushed that back a little bit farther. Typically, we like to have about 2 calendars worth of school years on our website for families to be able to plan. This time we held that just a few months longer because we weren't sure what impact the construction was going to have on the project.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you very
Thanks.
much. We'll be voting on the calendar later in the meeting. At this time, the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So it's summertime, but there is quite a bit going on in Worthington schools. So you know that our mission is to empower a community of learners who will change the world, and we do that through our 4 vision statements. Our first vision statements, we will engage each student with diverse opportunities to maximize every student's potential. And we're really excited that we have many, many Worthington students learning this summer through different travel opportunities. International trips from Worthington have traveled to 4 different continents, and multiple student groups have traveled just locally to New York City and out west. Our Worthington Field Studies program is currently in the American Northwest. And just as a couple examples, Worthington Academy's Pete Bluval took 17 students to South Africa. So they visited Johannesburg, Kruger National Park, Cape Town. Pete just said adventure of a lifetime for sure. Thomas Worthington High School social studies teacher Lindsay Van Fossen's group spent 14 days exploring the history and sites of Italy and Greece and wrapping up their trip with a 3-day cruise of the Greek islands. So pretty awesome different opportunities going on throughout the school district. Our second vision statements, we will provide a safe environment where every student can grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. Our elementary summer programming concludes at the end of this week. So over 500 elementary students have participated in summer learning. They were in summer reading camp to boost their early literacy skills, math and literacy boost programs for grades 3 through 5, EL boost to build language skills in grade K-5 and emergent English learners. Other K-5 students explored extension opportunities through creativity camp and explore STEM courses. We have 1 week remaining in our June high school session, and our students are making great progress toward graduation. We have 131 different semester hours of credit that have been recovered. This summer, over 80 students are making progress towards Get Ahead credit in wellness, Math 1, Math 2, physical science, and robotics. 7 of our students so far in the Rise Up program have passed the customer service and sales exam and are preparing for the retail exam. Which successful completion of these exams help to meet the graduation requirements for competency and for SEALs. We are extremely thankful to our many teachers, educational assistants, bilingual assistants, nurses, and office staff that have chosen to continue working with students this summer. In addition, I want to say a humongous thank you to our transportation and food service departments. We provided busing to over 575 students. And we've served over 220 breakfasts and 350 lunches daily at Slate Hill, Bluffsview, and Worthington Kilbourne High School. Thanks also to our Worthington Resource Pantry, who provided fresh produce, carrots, oranges, apples, and green peppers, which has been provided each week to each child at Slate Hill and Bluffsview. Over 1,200 bags of produce given out so far. And special thanks to our Family Mentor Foundation, that has provided 630 buddy boxes to our summer students, which is just awesome. And last but not least, the Worthington Libraries enrolled students at Slate Hill and Bluffsview in the literacy and EL programs, so in those early programs, in the summer reading program, and delivered books to all of them. So we are truly grateful and thankful for our community partners, which help Worthington schools, help our students. Our third vision statements will provide consistent communication and promote dialogue with our community. Hopefully everyone in the community saw our spring-summer issue of the district newsletter, which was mailed to all residents. Should have received it about a week ago. There was a question and answer insert into that communication regarding construction, and then information in following up on that, information regarding phase 2 of our master facility plan has been updated on the district website. So if you read that and you're looking for more information, that district website, phase 2 is updated there. And then we'll be responsible and transparent with our community resources. Just last week, or a week and a half ago now, the Ohio Cyber Reserve was on site and working with our technology team to assess cybersecurity vulnerabilities and provide recommendations to reduce cyber threats. So Jeff and his whole tech team asked for this voluntary assessment from the Ohio Cyber Reserve and are going to work really hard to implement their recommendations. And so it's a really cool program. Again, you can Google Ohio Cyber Reserve and just check out that statewide program. But I appreciate our tech department working hard to keep all of our data safe.
Thank you very much for a very informative report. Any questions or comments? Okay. I would be remiss if I didn't say one thing when you were talking about transportation. This year we drastically changed the busing, transportation, start time schedule, and I just think kudos go to the transportation department for at least this board member says very, very few complaints. And in fact, I think I've had more complaints in years when we made no changes than we did this year. So I think enormous compliments to them for that. Mr. Cusick, anything going on in the financial world, especially downtown?
Just a bit. I will take a moment, first off, to explain locally here what we're doing tonight, as there is a significant amount of financial information on tonight's agenda, so I thought I'd describe that process a bit. Later on, what you're asked to approve are the final appropriations for the fiscal year that ends on Friday, and then the initial appropriations or the budget for next school year, which begins on Saturday. Not much variation from either of those. From the 5-year forecast we completed this ending fiscal year, basically on target with where we expect it to be. Next year's proposed budget is about $700,000 higher, simply because we finished the year $700,000 lower this year, and we allow buildings to carry those funds over, so it's a wash at the end of the day. As a reminder, while the official resolution that's in the agenda just includes the summarized numbers, we do have a comprehensive budget book that's on our website. We have a few hard copies here that go into detail on not just the general fund, but all of the other data that's behind the many funds that are under the district's control. Not many districts do a comprehensive public-facing budget document like this, so we're very proud of how this document has progressed in accordance with GFOA standards. For the record, our budget is presented 4 days ahead of the deadline, something that many of our friends at the federal and state level seem to not be able to grasp, but ours is 4 days ahead of schedule. Speaking of that state budget, as you know, we're at what they consider a reconciliation period where we try to iron out the differences. 6 legislators were appointed to that commission. I communicated to them. The biggest impact, in my opinion, was the adjustment that was made by the Senate to reduce and change the capacity calculation for Worthington. That means $3.5 to $4 million annually. So we asked and we informed them that this is important that they restore that back. So we're hopeful that that committee will at least do that. There were several other what I would say nonsensical items, if that's the right words to use. For example, we a proposal that if we were going to demolish a building, we would have to offer that building up for sale, much like we're doing at Thomas, even if we were building a building right in its place. It doesn't make a lot of sense, so we're hoping those things start to go away. But the goal is to have a budget from the state by Friday. We'll see if that happens. I think it should, certainly, but there has been indication that it may not, but we'll see. And then lastly, the annual required records commission meeting consisting of myself, the board president, and the superintendent will be held this Thursday at 9. It promises to be an exciting meeting when we review the records retention schedule. We did put it in the board docs in case you got that email. We figured why not archive it in this system. So that's all.
Thank you very much, and thank you for communicating to the leadership of the legislature, or more specifically, I guess, the members of the conference committee, and appreciate that very much. Comments, questions? Okay, if not, it's our turn. Any board committee reports or announcements? I think last time I started down there, so I'll start down here.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Nothing on my end, just to say that our work session, the revised version of the handbook is actually now ready for you, Charlie. So I'll send you the link after today's meeting. But I made the changes that we talked about. Kelly put a fresh pair of eyes on it, tweaked a few things, and we're ready for your expert grammatical wordsmithing. And I appreciate you doing so. And I think it'll feel good at that point to have what will be, you know, obviously an evolving document, but a handbook for.
Are we going to do all the technical stuff in-house or OSBA, or did?
I think
you
that,
check that out?
where did we land on? Did we
So
land? Go
I
ahead.
sent the message to Cheryl.
Thank you.
And I have not heard back from her.
Okay.
I will follow up again with her tomorrow, because we landed where we would check with them first to see if that's something that they offered with, well, they're already working with us for, and then if not, then we'll have to go with Plan B, whatever Plan B looks like.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you very much. Jennifer? Kelly? I don't have anything except, as TJ said, apparently both houses have already prepared continuing resolutions to go past June 30th, but the governor today came out and urged the conference committee to finish up before June 30th. The problem is, of course, they're using as a starting point, apparently, or at least what I heard today, is the Senate budget bill rather than the House budget bill, and so there's a whole lot of changes that have to be considered by the conference committee. So that's all I have. Any other comments? Okay. If not, we're ready for actions recommended by the treasurer. Mr. Cusick.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the minutes as presented in enclosure E1. Those are the minutes from the June 2nd work session and the 12th regular meeting.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented in E1?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented in E1. Any comments, questions, amendments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Both sets of minutes are approved, both the regular meeting and the work session. New business, Mr. Cusick.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the year-end transfers and advances as outlined in the schedule there. The difference between a transfer and an advance: a transfer is a one-time movement of funds that will not be repaid. An advance is for lack of a better word, a short-term loan that will be repaid when those grant funds are received from the federal government. So motion to approve the year-end transfer and advances as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is the motion with respect to just the 2023 appropriations resolution or both?
We're right before there, the transfers and advances.
Oh, I'm sorry, the transfers, I'm sorry. I got you, okay. All right, so it's just the one. All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do have something.
Go ahead.
So I was looking at this and I contacted TJ about it. Just looking at the balance from the general fund to the food service fund and how it's almost $60,000. And you said that it increased, so for 2 years we did not have that because the lunches were free. But prior to that, it was $41,000. So obviously a huge significant jump. And just wondering how we can have conversation about making sure that we're supporting our families the best way that we can. So I know at the beginning of the year, Brian presented to all of us and talked about how, he was making a really big push, right, to make sure that people are filling out the application for free and reduced lunch. But maybe we need to do like a follow-up. I'm not sure how that looks. Or if like food services can work with our counselors, if they notice a pattern that a student is not paying for lunch often, that maybe reaching out to the counselor to see if there's some work that we can do to make sure that they have or need a free or reduced lunch application. So just, wondering how we can best be supportive of that as a district. I'm not sure what the policy or procedure is across the board in cafeterias of like if our students, if they don't have money, obviously not everybody is being turned away, right? But making sure that if we're not turning students away, we're not turning any students away. Like, is there a policy about that? So that's just something I'm throwing out. Not that I expect anyone to have any answers right now, but just maybe something to look at as the year goes on.
Yeah, I certainly, I can put Brian Hunt in contact directly with you. I do know every year it is a challenge. So under the food service guidelines, you get a temporary status from when you roll over for 30 days. So it's always a challenge at the end of September to get families to reapply because you do have to reapply. So there could be a period of days where they flip over to full pay, and then they realize that, and then we have to get them to reapply. So that could be working into this problem itself. I do know there's constant communication from the cafeteria to the front office. I do know they send those notices home and try to collect.
Okay, good.
I guess the other thing that I would ask, great questions, Kelly, is how do we request that families fill out those forms? And is there any means by which we can simplify that? In other words, like DocuSign or electronically? If we understand that there's the cost of a license for DocuSign probably is drastically less than $60,000 a year, right? And so we might benefit from making the process even easier than is now. And I say that not understanding what it is right now. So just an additional idea.
There is an online version, so
Okay.
they can go on the website and do it, and information rolls over from year to year. Ms. Davis, so what I heard you say is, obviously, how are we helping our families, right? So looking at that application for free and reduced lunch, looking at how do we connect our counselors with families, looking about how do we make sure that procedures in all of our cafeterias are the same when it comes to feeding our students.
And not saying they're not working hard, because I know they are.
Understand?
But, just.
Yeah, we'll dig into that though.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
And I guess especially if somebody was eligible the year before, they got the 30-day grace period, and they're a little late getting the new form in, we don't charge, we charge them in that interim period, I suppose, but we don't come back and collect if they haven't paid, do we? We assume that they were, we take care of that given that everything indicates they were eligible the whole time?
I don't want to give you the wrong answer because there are strict rules around the program regarding
Okay.
that. But I'll follow up.
I guess just I hope that to the extent the feds allow us to, I hope we, I can see where a family could be a week late getting their form filled out. And I would hate for us to be.
But just to clarify, and we all know this, but that amount of money is for all students in the school district or all families in the school district that have unpaid fees. Many of them would not qualify for free or reduced lunch. So it's, sorry. So, it's a both and conversation.
Can the information be shared with, I would like to know the answers to Kelly's questions as well. Can that be shared with me or the rest of the board as well? I don't know if other board members want to have that information as well, but I think those were great questions. Thank you for sharing them, Kelly. You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the year-end transfers and advances. Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Best,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
The motion passes. Now we can move on to the appropriations resolutions for 2023 and 2024.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the board approve the final fiscal year 2023 appropriations as is indicated in enclosure F2.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the fiscal year 2023 appropriations resolution as indicated in enclosure F2. Any comments, questions? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Best,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Cusick.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the board approve fiscal year 2024 appropriations as presented by the treasurer indicated in enclosure F3, fiscal 2024 appropriations.
May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2024 appropriations resolution. Any questions, comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Best,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now we move to the 2024, this is fiscal year 2024 fee schedule. May I have a motion to approve the 2024 fee schedule as indicated in enclosure F4?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the fee schedule that is indicated in enclosure F4. Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Go for it.
TJ and I had great conversation. So I was looking at this fee schedule and looking at the instructional fees and asked TJ to give us a number of how much instructional fees are and would cost the district, like how that would impact our district if we were as a district to cover those for students and families. So the number was 400,000, right?
Correct, slightly under 400,000.
And then you said something about sixth grade camp. So do we cover sixth grade camp?
We do. The district a few years ago, we used to charge sixth grade for sixth grade camp. And then when we transitioned sixth grade to middle school, the district made the decision to just cover the cost of camp. We standardized camp. But part of it was when it was at the sixth grade level, people went different places, buildings went different places. The cost varied. Some stayed overnight. Some buildings could afford camp, quite frankly, more than others. And so from an equity standpoint, we decided to just cover that cost. So there is no charge for sixth grade camp.
Okay. So just, again, not for today, but for a conversation of what would it look like if we were to cover instructional fees that would cover all of our students? And it may seem small. Some of the numbers are small. Some of the numbers are not very small. And I just think about the beginning of the year and how busy it is and how much people have to pay, how much families have to come out. And if you have more than one student, anyway, so I was just wondering what it would look like. And so maybe we could just talk about that as we talk about different governance things in the future about what impact, and obviously a heavy conversation with TJ about what that would look like for our district. I'm just curious.
I appreciate that, Kelly, and I would like to request that we engage in a similar conversation regarding our extracurricular participation. And I guess I want to say that I'm not, I understand that our boosters and our athletic departments, and our coaches, people behind the scenes work together, right, to help our families and our students. And I don't know if we have anything from an administrative procedure that encourages them to do so, that makes sure that they understand that that's supported, that if we know a family can't pay for a student to participate in a particular activity that we as a community we as a school district want to support. So whether it's we reevaluate our entire policy and what's the financial impact on pay to play, or we look at what are those other levers that we may be already utilizing and want to ensure that they're consistently applied. I would welcome that conversation as well, whether we choose to do it at a upcoming regular meeting and slate it for then, or by looking at the financial impact and the current practices so that we're all on the same page. Those things, I feel like there's some information gathering that needs to take place before we have that conversation. And then I also recognize that neither one of those were on our goals for the coming school year. And so I think we have to, in recognizing the priorities that we've already identified for the district, appropriately position those from a timing standpoint. So I would welcome feedback from you, Trent, and your team and TJ as to when the appropriate time for those conversations are. And I will still vote in favor of the fees today. So.
Yeah, I will just say, since we're having the conversation, just to be clear, we do allow for eligible free students to be charged no fee on all of these. And our reduced lunch students are charged half the price that you see. Parents do have to sign a waiver, again, because of confidentiality reasons. They have to sign a waiver that they allow their free meal status to be shared. And we have had a handful of families in the past that have decided not to share such information. So we are doing that part of it. That's not necessarily written out here, but it's part of it.
Definitely helpful and relevant. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, TJ, because if I knew that, I had forgotten about what the breakdown was there for free and reduced lunch. The only thing I wanted to add to this conversation, which I would be very open to having this conversation as well, is that I think a couple years ago, we also took a look at booster fees with SPAC, just to try to get a handle on, because I had received feedback from parents in certain extracurriculars that the booster fees were impacting and how that's being handled, and especially for families that may be free and reduced and receiving the ability to pay less for the actual fees, but then there's the booster fee component of that as well. And I think to really holistically look at all of it, that piece would need to be looked at as well.
What else? Okay, as Jennifer knows, for the 17th consecutive year, I will be voting against this, and I'm not going to ask to break it out because there are fees that I certainly approve of. I certainly approve of charging admission for athletic and other events, and I certainly approve of charging for student parking. But it's always been my position since long before I was even on the board, but certainly since being on the board, is that public education should be free, and I think that instructional fees, pay-to-play fees are inconsistent with that philosophical position. On the other hand, I strongly support the fact that the General Assembly has allowed us to charge fees because in a time of financial exigency, I would certainly prefer to charge fees like this than to cancel these activities or to be laying off teachers or staff or anything like that. So I'm not against that being available, but I think that it's a fee that should be put in only when the district is unable to afford it, like if a levy were to fail or something like that. But I'm not going to ask to break it out. I never have asked to break it out, but I am, as I've always said, free. I do have one question though. This tuition is for preschool. This is for Sutter Park. It's not the kindergarten full day tuition, right? We've already approved that.
The all-day kindergarten tuition in the fall because they start the lottery, so that's not on.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, I didn't realize there were monthly fees at the preschool. Okay.
Let's go back, because not everyone at the preschool is charged a
Correct, those
fee.
are typical students.
Okay, the peer.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other comments?
I actually have a clarification question. And this is under our athletic admissions, our student athletic passes, I'm assuming that 6 through 12 is receiving athletic passes again? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that and maybe that was said somewhere,
Sorry,
and I
no, I don't,
missed
we
it.
didn't, I don't, I think it was assumed. So
Okay.
you're exactly right. I should.
Okay, because I know last year we talked about that it would be extended, but we weren't sure how long. So, and I think that that's a wonderful thing if we can do that to give access to our middle and high school students to those athletic.
Yeah, from my
events.
perspective, it's been super successful. It's been a really positive thing for kids in our school district. And we would like to continue that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I would certainly support looking at booster fees. But my understanding, which goes back many years, back when I was treasurer of several booster clubs, that it can never be mandatory. It can't be made a condition of being on the team, unlike the pay-to-play fees. But I suppose some treasurers or some booster clubs or some coaches might read that a little differently, and I frankly do not recall what our policy exactly says on that, but I don't think any student should be excluded because frankly, some clubs, including some that my son was on, the booster fees were far more than the pay-to-play fees were. Okay. We're ready to vote? Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
No. Motion passes. Now we're ready for the personnel consent agenda. Dr. Bowers.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda. That's items G2 through G9 on your agenda. Items G2 through G9, please.
May I have a motion to approve items G2 through G9?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve items G2 through G9. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
That was a tie for the record. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now we're ready for actions recommended by the superintendent. New business.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item H1. It's the acceptance of the singular donation that's on the agenda. Item H1, please.
So moved.
It's been moved and
Second.
it's seconded now that we approve the one, that we accept the one donation. Any comments, questions? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
We have accepted the donation. Item 2, H2.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item H2. Item H2 is a continuation of our facilities use agreement with Swim Inc. for the natatorium. Just to point out that this is the same financial terms that we're currently working under, so it just continues that until we have constructed a new natatorium, and then we'll create a new agreement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the renewal of the facilities use agreement with Swim Inc. Any questions, comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
H3, Dr. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item H3. Item H3 is a recommendation that we authorize an easement and permit authority, which will be utilized at Worthington Kilbourne High School as part of the ELP program and district-wide improvements.
We have a motion to approve the easement at Worthington Kilbourne.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the easement at Worthington Kilbourne. Any questions, comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, actions recommended by the Board of Education. The first item is not an action item. We have never voted on committee assignments or liaison assignments, but they are spelled out here in our agenda so everyone can see them. And this is a different system than we've used in the past. In the past, we've always changed in January. When I became president, I decided to keep all the committee assignments the same for the school year, and with the new ones becoming effective June 1. And again, this is not binding precedent. If this isn't working out well, the next president can decide what he or she wants to do with respect to the timing or the committee assignments. But under our board policy, it's the prerogative of the board president to select the people on each of the committees and the liaison. And we've kept all the liaisons the same, so they're not all listed here, except for Riverly, which I asked Ms. Best to replace me on the Riverly, and she agreed to do so. All right, the next item is approval of the school calendar. May I have a motion to approve the 2024, we're not talking about the coming year, we're talking about the following year, school year calendar that was presented for our first reading at our last board meeting and was presented earlier in this meeting for our second reading. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2024-2025 school calendar, which had the approval in the survey of all groups, at least that are permitted to vote. So any questions or comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Motion passes. We now have a 2024-2025 calendar. At this time, I would ask for a motion to approve a resolution regarding the reemployment of both our superintendent and treasurer as indicated in enclosure I-3.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution regarding the reemployment of our superintendent and treasurer. Any comments, questions? Seeing none. Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Motion passes, and the prerogative of the president here, I just want to take hopefully about 20 seconds or so to say, I think I'm convinced, I'm certain I'm speaking on behalf of the full board that we really, really value and praise the work of our superintendent and our treasurer, and we are so fortunate, unlike many, many districts, both in central Ohio, across the state, and across the nation, who are looking for superintendents and or treasurers. So we really value continuity, and we feel we've got an outstanding superintendent, an outstanding treasurer, and it gives me great honor, and I believe the whole board, that we are retaining our superintendent and treasurer. So thank you both for your outstanding work. All right. Any requests, questions, or concerns from the board?
No, Charlie, the only thing I want to say is just in clarification on the changes to the committees and liaisons. You mentioned that there were no changes to the other liaison assignments, and I guess I would just point out I'm not taking the short stick or an abbreviated responsibilities. That there are other committees that are on there that didn't change.
Oh, right.
Merely because someone just glancing at it would be like, well, Nikki's only doing one thing.
Oh.
So there are other committees that remain the same and are just not reflected on the agenda.
Yep, thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
Okay. Yep. I didn't notice that. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. The calendar at 7:30 in the morning on Friday, July the 10th, we will be meeting. It will be a short meeting. You're all welcome to attend, but that's just to take care of legally necessary personnel matters. The community is certainly, the public certainly welcome to attend, but generally that's a 5-minute meeting. And we will not vote on any other matters unless it's absolutely essential, which we never have in the past, and hopefully it won't be necessary this time either, certainly in our intention. Then on July 24th, we'll have our only full-time, full-fledged meeting on Monday, July 24th at 6:30 p.m., our regular time. And then on August 7th, we will be having a special meeting, a work session, again, to finish up any issues about the handbook, if there are any, and to talk about general governance issues, but nothing particularly substantive. All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, et cetera, of a public employee, one of our employees.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. That's not a debatable motion. Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Best,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to go into executive session is passed. After the executive session, we will come out of executive session and for the sole purpose of adjourning the meeting. We have to adjourn the meeting in public session, but we will not engage in any business or any votes other than adjourning after the executive session. You're free to hang around out here, but you're not allowed to go into executive session. So thank you all for coming, and have a great evening.